My father chose me to succeed him. He held to his decision until death.
We have the blood of the dragon.
The war will be fought, and many will die.
You got it!
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. House of the Dragon released a new Season 2 Episode 5 clip and some more scenes, so we'll break it all down. There's a couple of really big concepts they introduce, metaphorically and literally, because we see Vermithor in that trailer. Everybody wondering when we see Vermithor again. But we also have Aemond becoming Prince Regent. He's like the next option the Greens have to take over the Iron Throne because of what happened to Aegon in Episode 4, being turned into crispy chicken, essentially. We even get a scene of what looks like Aemond and Helena in front of the Iron Throne. I know there have been all kinds of theories about the two of them together since Season 1, and been hoping we get some more epic dragon dreams for her during all this. It just feels too loaded of a scene here to see them standing in front of the Iron Throne for her to not drop another epic dragon dream. If you really think about the actual dragon dreams that she does drop, they're all meant to be very ominous, like usually unfortunate things happen to them, or like really bad things are happening that she's talking about. But it is kind of funny how she will just casually drop the future. Like she literally is telling them the future, but nobody really understands the context of what she's saying and thinks that it's all nonsense. We even get more footage of Jace and Rhaenyra in Dragonstone in the library reading more books, probably related to Aegon's prophecy of the Song of Ice and Fire. This whole library set, the Valyrian library they built at Dragonstone, is probably one of the coolest new sets they built next to all the Harrenhal stuff that they built. But there's a bunch more going on here, so we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. And really big reminder, Comic-Con is literally next week as of me posting this video. I'm not expecting a ton of House of the Dragon Season 3 stuff till after the finale though. Just starting with the new footage, biggest literal metaphorical thing here, Rhaenyra with Vermithor. Notice how she looks kind of afraid, like she's slowly inching up to him, extra careful. Remember, he's like a grumpy old grandpa dragon. They even put like a bushy grandpa beard around his mouth, but they're all horns like spikes growing out of his head. It's kind of the same vibe with a Vhagar. They make her seem like a grumpy old grandma dragon with really bad arthritis. This scene will obviously remind people of that Season 1 scene from the finale with Daemon going to see Vermithor. Been wondering when we see Vermithor again in the season. A lot of people also ask, what was the Valyrian song that Daemon was singing to Vermithor? There's actually a translation of that we have now. Daemon's song goes like this. He was saying, "Fire breather, winged leader, but two heads to a third sing. From my voice, the fires have spoken, and the price has been paid with blood magic. With words of flame, with clear eyes, to bind the three, to you I will sing. As one we gather, and with three heads we shall fly as we were destined, beautifully, freely." The whole three heads is probably a reference to Aegon the Conqueror with his two sister wives and their three dragons. It makes sense that after the time of Aegon the Conqueror, many Valyrian songs were created within the family, like mythology about the three of them. If we're talking about them activating a bunch of new dragons, them showing new dragons that we haven't seen before, I know everybody's wanting to see Balerion the Black Dread actually flying around in the sky. They're probably going to save that for the Aegon the Conqueror prequel series that they're working on the next couple of years. It'll probably be at least like 3 years before we see any footage from that, before they even start filming, so it might even be like 4 years, but we will eventually get some footage from that. That's one of the reasons why they introduced Aegon the Conqueror's Valyrian armor when Aegon was putting it on going into battle. Like, this is the Conqueror's armor, and he's wearing Aegon the Conqueror's Valyrian steel crown, because they've been using different Easter eggs to tie all these different prequels and sequels and the main show together across the timeline. The Valyrian steel armor and the crown is just the next part of that. So we'll probably see Aegon the Conqueror wearing that Valyrian armor when they actually do the conquest itself. And we'll see him riding on Balerion the Black Dread, whose wings were said to be so big that they could cover an entire town in shadow. Speaking of all those scenes of Jace and Rhaenyra inside the Dragonstone library, we've gotten several scenes of her standing in the doorway here with like the backdrop and the light coming through all these different scrolls here. It's all Valyrian history. All very cool, but in the background, they keep showing you the skull of that other dragon. That's probably Meraxes, Princess Rhaenys, his other sister wife's dragon, who was killed with Rhaenys after Aegon's conquest, a couple years after the actual conquest itself down in Dorne. That's why it's really big, but not quite as big as Balerion the Black Dread skull. You can also kind of see a big hole in the skull where it was killed with a scorpion. It'll be really interesting to see who they cast for Aegon and his sister wives during that show. The whole reason why Rhaenyra is probably going to visit Vermithor at the Dragonmont is probably because of Rhaenys' death, the loss of Meleys. Not only has Rhaenyra made up her mind that it is time for war, she's ready to activate the dragons, the available dragons that haven't been claimed yet. And they literally just lost one of their biggest, most capable ones and their next best fighter after Daemon. There'll be a lot of questions about this, like who are the most powerful dragons, who are the most powerful fighters on dragons? It's not always about who has the biggest dragon, like Aemond and Vhagar are literally the biggest dragon, but it does help a lot, like it weights things in your favor a lot. So you don't always need to be the best fighter if your dragon is vastly bigger than the other dragons, which is the case with Aemond. If we're just talking about the Blacks side, not counting Aemond or Vhagar or any of the Greens dragons, it goes Daemon and Caraxes, he's their best fighter on one of their biggest dragons. Then Rhaenys, she's almost as good of a fighter, and her dragon is about as big as Daemon's. I would say he's probably like a little bit better. If the two of them actually fought, he would probably come out on top, but barely. Then you have Rhaenyra and Syrax. She's a solid fighter, like she has a lot of experience. We haven't seen it yet, but we will see her fight during the Dance of the Dragons at some point in one of these seasons. But she's not quite as experienced or quite as good a fighter as Daemon or Rhaenys, and Syrax is just a little bit smaller than their dragons. Then whoever can claim Vermithor, if you've read the books, you know who that is. We don't need to talk about that during this video. It'll be one of the Dragonseeds. We will see that in a future episode. But even if that person is totally inexperienced in riding a dragon, like has no idea how to command a dragon in battle, Vermithor is so big and so powerful just on his own that it'll make them instantly one of the most powerful weapons. Then you have Silverwing, same idea with her. Whoever winds up claiming her doesn't need to be an amazing fighter because she as a dragon is so powerful on her own. Then it's the same concept with Sheepstealer, one of the wild dragons, whoever claims them. I have theories about why that might be Rhaena on the show and they're changing some of the plot from the books, but we'll see about that. Same idea with Sea Smoke after that, whoever winds up claiming Sea Smoke. Then going down the list a little, you have Jace on Vermax, who's a little bigger than Baela's Moondancer, the way they've changed things on the show, and Jace has been riding a little bit longer than Baela, so he's probably just a little bit better, more effective fighter on Dragonback than her. She's meant to be pretty good too, so she's like right there next to him, but their dragons are so small, they're not as effective as the bigger dragons, even if they are slightly better fighters than some of the new Dragonseeds. Then on the show, they've changed things and made little Joffrey's dragon Taraxes much smaller than Moondancer, so he'd be like next on the list of the Blacks in terms of fighters' power. Then after that, obviously, tiny baby Aegon the Lesser, who rides Stormcloud, who can barely fly, like maybe he isn't even ready to fly yet. Another good example of that on the side of the Greens would be like Daeron and Tessarion, who said that they're not quite ready to fly, like Tessarion is almost about to fly. So like the two of them would be at the bottom of the list if you included every single dragon. Then talking about this new footage of Aemond at the Red Keep and a couple other different scenes just involving him in general. So the Greens meet with their small council. They decide what to do about the rulership of Westeros because Aegon is now crispy chicken. They need a new prince or princess regent, like somebody has to become regent in his stead. So basically that means that Aemond is their next best option because he's so studied in Valyrian history. It seems like he wanted the job back during season 1, even though he felt like Aegon was supposed to be king. Like he was very ready to toe the line according to what the small council told him. But you could kind of see it on his face when Aegon was being crowned, like he was looking at the crown itself like that should be mine. Then we have all the drama during season 2. Like, it just seems like Aegon and Aemond's relationship has deteriorated even more over the years. Then you have the events of episode 4, where it did look like Aemond meant for Aegon to die. Like, he was hoping that he would be killed first by Rhaenys, and then later almost seemed like he was going to finish him off himself. Give him a full-on Dracarys, like in the middle of the sky. Do not care about collateral damage. There'll be a lot of questions about that, I'm sure, during episode 5 and beyond. Like, will people remember that? Like, does Kristen Cole tell the small council, or anyone else, even Alicent, that Aemond full-on Dracarys Aegon? My assumption is that they'll be so rattled, like anybody who was potentially there and could have seen what happened will be so messed up with so much PTSD that they won't be thinking about that. The real question is that if Aegon eventually wakes up, will he remember what happened and will he and Aemond talk about it like, I know you tried to kill me? What will that eventually be like? There's no actual recording of them talking about that in the books after the fact, so it's possible that they talked about it behind closed doors, and that's why the history was never recorded, because you remember that all this history that they're basing the show on was recorded third-party style by maesters in Mushroom, so if they weren't around to hear conversations, it didn't wind up in the book. That's how they explain a lot of the brand new scenes between characters on the show that you didn't see in the books, like, oh, it just happened and nobody else heard about it. But really interested to see what Helaena tells to Aemond when they're standing in front of the Iron Throne here. There's also a lot of people since season 1 that also thought that Aemond secretly coveted his sister Helaena, even though she was meant to be married to Aegon. It's possible that that's the case, like maybe at one time he did want her, and maybe he just thinks of her in a very protective, special kind of way now. But I do think that Helena's children are Aegon's children, not Aemond's children. I don't think that Aemond would do that, like he's so by the book, by the numbers kind of guy. Even if he wanted to be with her. But I am sure she's going to drop some epic dragon dream when they're talking here. Maybe Aemond, though, because he's so studied in Valyrian history and he's kind of tuned into that kind of stuff, maybe he will take some meaning from what she says where other people within the Greens do not. The other big reminder, too, is that he has the Valyrian dagger, and because he's so studying Valyrian history, maybe he will also detect the Valyrian writing on it. So it's possible that he could learn about the prophecy that way, like by accident, because you also have Alicent studying Aegon's prophecy, like she knows about the prophecy, she's studying all this history, so they're probably building up to some kind of reveal where Alicent tries to tell someone else about the prophecy itself within the Greens, and that might be Aemond. Then we see Jace at the Twins with the Freys trying to negotiate with them to try and get their support in the upcoming war. Part of the idea is that going back in history, the Freys were meant to be thought of as honorable people. Walder Frey, during the events of the main Game of Thrones series, was the one that sort of threw that out the window. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions about this too. There's a scene of Daemon and Rhaenyra together, but also scenes that we see from episode 5. I know these are from episode 5 of Daemon back at Harrenhal, especially with Alys Rivers. So the question then becomes, does Daemon have more crazy Weirwood visions of adult Rhaenyra with them together, or does he just go back and meet with her during episode 5 at some point, or could it be from a future episode? Because they do that, like they're known to include footage from a bunch of different future episodes. I would not be surprised if by the end of the season, Daemon has already left Harrenhal. It seems like he and Alys Rivers developed some kind of weird relationship too. Not a physical relationship. I don't know if they actually wind up sleeping together, but that would be a very Daemon thing kind of do. Spooky woman doing all kinds of witchy stuff to you. What's your first thought? Well, better sleep with her. There's a lot of book imagery with her pregnant with Aemond, but we'll see how they explain that on the show. Like, if she has a child, is that Aemond's child or is that Daemon's child? I am sure there'll be a lot of questions about that going forward at some point. There's another scene of Alicent being super pissed off at Criston Cole. This is from the other trailer where he talks about how they've given the war to the dragons. Basically him telling him that it's out of their hands. Now that the dragons have all been activated, it's going to be really, really crazy. No surprise given what happened during episode 4 that her mood has gotten even worse when she's thinking of Criston Cole. Like, how dare you get my son killed or almost killed? Imagine her being pissed off at him, then leaving, then her son coming back, just this broken husk of crispy chicken. Then we have a couple scenes of Corlys looking like he's having the long dark night of the soul, probably having just learned about Rhaenys' death and just trying to reckon with that, sitting on his throne at Driftmark. You can definitely tell how this is going to drive a bigger wedge between him and Rhaenyra. Like, he already didn't like Rhaenyra and Daemon because he kind of blames them for the death of his son and for the death of his daughter earlier in the timeline. Remember, she was married to Daemon. It also looks like Rhaenyra has a scene with Baela where she's trying to basically help her deal with the death of Rhaenys because she was so close to Rhaenys. Baela was. She was essentially fostered at Driftmark for most of her life. If you don't remember, Rhaena grew up at Dragonstone for the most part with Daemon and Rhaenyra. But part of the idea, and this will probably be more important for later episodes, like they don't have a lot of footage of it here, is the idea that Daemon didn't care about Rhaena or pay her as much attention growing up because she wasn't a dragon rider. She didn't have a dragon, so he didn't view her as being as special as Baela. Maybe that will change if Rhaena winds up claiming Sheep Stealer. That would be like the most proud you could make Daemon as a father. Papa bless. There's a lot you can say about Daemon, but up to present day, he just does not seem like the most attentive father, just in general, for any of his children, even his children with Rhaenyra. I don't think we've even seen a scene with him and his children with her. Most of the scenes where we see him being like a good father to Baela and Rhaena were like way back during season 1 when they were much younger after the death of their mother. And even that's actually a deleted scene. Like, that scene didn't make it into the actual episode. But part of the idea of all his crazy Weirwood visions at Harrenhal is him reckoning with all of his selfishness and the consequences of all the things that he's done over the years. So we'll see how this all winds up affecting him. Like maybe there will be some positive outcome in this. Like maybe he will learn something positive from these with the help of Alys Rivers, who does seem like she cares about helping him, even if it's in her own spooky, witchy kind of way. But if there's any other new scenes or footage that you spotted that I didn't talk about in the video, write them below in the comments and I'll talk about them in my full episode 5 video. That'll post after they release it on Sunday, so be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss that. Everybody click here for that. I'll update the link as soon as I post it, and click here for all my other House of the Dragon episodes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.